Please ask everybody to mute their screens. And when we're ready, we'll give it one more moment and then we will begin. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. For those who have just entered the room, please ensure that your screens are muted and we will begin. So tonight, what a fascinating event. You've all joined us for Glimpsing Freedom, the story just before Pesach of Natan Sharansky. So what I want to do is a few thank yous. I am Paul Charney, chairman of the Zionist Federation of UK and Ireland, working together with Yitzhak Sonnenschein, head of the WZO delegation in the UK. Thank you, Yitzhak. We are hugely privileged to have fantastic speakers tonight. First of all, I want to say and introduce to my dear friend, Yaakov Chagoel, who is the chairman of the WZO in Israel. If anyone had to ask who is the #1 Zionist in the world today, Yaakov would be the answer. So we are privileged to have Yaakov here with us today. Yaakov will say a few words, but before we move on to him, I'd just like to give you a slight running order of what we'll be doing. We will have a Dr. Tuvia Book, who will be talking to us. Dr. Tuvia Book is a leading Israeli tour guide in Israel, author, educator, and a former soldier of an elite IDF unit, combat unit. He's also a great presenter, particularly of the ZF and WZO's UK Off the Beaten Track series of virtual adventures and an inspirational Zionist series of different webinars. So Dr. Tuvia, thank you so much for joining us. Thereafter, we will have our esteemed guest, Natan Sharansky, who I will not introduce because either you all know Natan Sharansky and Dr. Tuvia will do a much better job than I am. And then thereafter, we will have some music. Just before Pesach, we've got Yuval Havkin, who is an Israeli musician of the Kedma Band in the UK. So without waiting any longer, I'd like to introduce my great friend, Yaakov, to say a few words on behalf of the WZO and Israel. Thank you, Yaakov.
Thank you very much, Paul, my friend. תודה רבה לפול, יושב ראש הפדרציה הציונית באנגליה. תודה רבה ליצחק זוננשטיין, השליח שלנו, נציג ההנהלה באנגליה, על הפעילות המדהימה שאנחנו עושים כאן באנגליה ובעולם כולו. ואני באמת רוצה לברך את כולכם בחג פסח כשר ושמח מכאן, מישראל, ושיהיה הרבה בריאות. אנחנו מקווים מאוד שבעזרת השם אנחנו נצא עוד מעט באמת מעבדות לחירות, מהקורונה הזאת אל החירות האמיתית, ושיהיה לכולם חג שמח. ואין ספק שנתן שרנסקי הוא האיש המדהים ביותר ללמוד מה זה לצאת מעבדות לחירות. 9 שנים שהוא ישב כאסיר ציון, והוא דמות אדירה למנהיג יהודי עם הרבה מאוד גאווה יהודית. אז באמת יישר כוח לכם, ושבאמת יהיה חג פסח כשר ושמח לכולם.
Fantastic. Yaakov, thank you so much. And a Chag Kasher Pesach Sameach to you and your whole family and everyone in Israel. And please, God, will be there in person to come and visit you. But until then, I'd like to introduce Dr. Tuvia Book, who I mentioned before. Dr. Tuvia, thank you for joining us. And I ask you to begin your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody from Modi'in, Israel. Makom Tov Be'emsa, good place in the middle. So as you probably all know, Israel just had another series of chaotic elections, which has exactly proved the same thing, that Israel is quite insane, because the definition of insanity is to repeat the same thing over and over again, even though it doesn't work. So we've just finished our 4th series of elections, and we have the same result as the other 3, which is not much of a result. And one of the reasons why is because you have 2 Jews and 3 opinions, as the old adage says. However, when it comes to one person who is the universal Jewish hero, who every Jew agrees about, that is, of course, the feature of tonight's presentation, the wonderful Natan Sharansky. Every Jew, whether religious or secular or left-wing or right-wing or new immigrant or veteran Israeli, he is a universal Jewish hero. And everyone can agree on that one. And then the question, of course, is, as I often ask my youth groups, what exactly is a hero? And Natan Sharansky epitomizes what it means to be a hero. Beyond anything else, totally selfless, leading the way for others. And that's what Natan did. He put himself before, he put the wish to emigrate to Israel for the millions of Soviet Jews as to be his chief cause, more important even than his own very freedom. And I remember growing up in the UK and South Africa, whenever we went to our youth movements, what would we used to do? We used to write letters to the Refuseniks. We used to write letters to our members of parliament. We used to go to demonstrations. And I remember as a teenager thinking, what's all this going to do? So I'm going to sit there and write a letter to our member of parliament, I'm a Refusenik. I even had a metal bracelet, like I'm sure a lot of you had, with the Refusenik's name on. And mine happened to be coincidentally Anatoly Sharansky on my bracelet. And we always used to think, now, what's all this going to do? I mean, really, our letters, our little teenage letters. But as the great Chinese proverb says, every 1,000-mile journey starts with one footstep. Every great waterfall starts with one drop of water. And really, the entire people of Israel, right throughout the world, was united in this tremendous movement, and like a stream, like a dam bursting, the results we saw in our own lifetime. Who would have thought in 1977, when Natan was arrested, that in 1986, literally just 9 years later, he'd be setting foot in the land of Israel. And yet it happened. It happened because individual Jews around the world in the various communities said to themselves, maybe we were a bit too quiet and non-active in the Shoah, especially the American Jews, but now is the time to stand up and be counted. And we should never say, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? But rather, because I'm one person, I'm going to make a difference. And that's indeed what happened in the 70s and the 80s with the Soviet Jewry movement. There was this tremendous energy in the Jewish world to try and free our brothers and sisters from behind the Iron Curtain. And it was just, it was just an incredible movement. And we actually got to see the results as well. Now, one of the most famous things about Natan Sharansky that everybody is aware of, just before we go to his, hear him speak himself, he'll be speaking about freedom, he'll be speaking about Passover, but just before he vanished from the public eye, he managed to give one famous last address. And of course, that was the famous speech he gave to the KGB court in Jerusalem, in Moscow, where he said, and it's written in his book here, I have his famous book, Fear No Evil. And he's actually just come out with a new book together with Gil Troy called Never Alone. But this book here, the Fear No Evil book, is based on the Psalm 23. And that's one of the things that helped keep him sane. We'll be talking, when we hear about him, we'll be hearing more about how he managed to spend 9 years in a gulag, of which half of that time was in total solitary confinement, with no books, with no pen, no pencil, no piece of paper, nothing to read, just literally a room. And somehow not only did he emerge, he thrived. Not only did he hold on to his sanity, he came out as the victor, because you can capture someone's body, but not their spirit and not their soul. And of course, now is the time on the eve of Pesach, just to go over what exactly he told our court and how relevant it is to all of us today at this time of the Jewish year. So I'm going to read it from my book called For the Sake of Zion, which features Jewish heroes from all over the Zionist enterprise. And it's called Next Year in Jerusalem, Natan Sharansky. And this is what he said. In 1978, in July, after months of brutal interrogation, as the KGB tried to prove a false accusation that he'd actually been a spy for America, which of course he hadn't. His only crime was the crime of a Jew wanting to return to the Jewish homeland, wanting to return to the land of Israel. That was what his actual crime was. And this is what he said before the court as he stood there unbowed. 5 years ago, I submitted my application to exit to Israel. Now I am further than ever from my dream. It would seem to be a cause for regret, but it's absolutely the other way around. I am happy. I am happy that I lived honorably, at peace, and with my conscience. I never compromised my soul, not even under the threat of death. For more than 2,000 years, the Jewish people, my people, have been dispersed. But wherever they are, wherever Jews are found, every year they have repeated, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Now, when I am further than ever from my people, from Avital, facing many arduous years of imprisonment, I turn and I say to my people, to my Avital, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Now I turn to you, the court, who are required to confirm a predetermined sentence. To you, I have nothing to say. Now that short speech is one of the epic speeches of the Jewish people that will ever go down in our annals, because at the end of the day, that's what enabled the Jews to stay Jewish. Natan Sharansky was a personification of that. For almost 2,000 years, we remained Jewish without physical possession of our land for three reasons, which all came out in that speech. We shared our traditions. We shared our sense of community. And most importantly, we always had a she'ifah l'tzion. We always yearned for Zion. Wherever we lived, in the good times and the bad times, from Afghanistan to Australia, from Moscow to Munich, all the Jews all around the world realized we have a common past of Adim Hayinu, we were once slaves, and a common hope and yearning for the future next year in Jerusalem. And because of all this tremendous surge of passionate movement around the Jewish world, led by Anatoly's wife, the unbelievable became a reality. Who would have thought? And yet it happened. And there are many images of Sharansky that we remember, those of us who grew up in that time, that are ingrained on our brains. We have the image of him and the grainy black and white footage speaking to foreign journalists in Moscow. And one of the most unforgettable images is when he was finally released, he crossed the bridge in Germany, and the last thing the KGB said to him was, walk in a straight line. So Sharansky, being Sharansky, walked in zigzags across the bridge. And then the tremendous euphoric welcome when he arrived in Israel later that day, to be greeted by tens of thousands of Israelis and swept up towards the Kotel. And before the great man himself comes on to speak, I'm going to ask my colleague Steve to play a short film clip where we get to see a collage of all these images and remind us of exactly who Natan Sharansky is and how he moved the Jewish world. Steve.
Hold on.
Okay.
This is a love story that brought down the Soviet Empire and freed millions of Jews. Natan Sharansky, human rights activist, Zionist, and Refusenik, fighting for his right to be a free Jew.
I was haunted, I was arrested sometimes, persecuted in different forms.
He also fought for the love of his life, Avital.
מאוד נמשכתי לבחור הזה, לשמחה שבעיניו ולחופש שהיה בעיניו ולאומץ לב כזה, לעמוד מול שם בצד השני של הרחוב עמדו אנשי קג"ב.
But on the eve of their wedding, they were cruelly separated by the Soviet regime.
אני מוזמנת פתאום למשרד של הוויזות. והם אומרים, אם את לא עוזבת, לעולם לא תצאי, לא את ולא חתנך. אני מחליטה פה בשבילי שאני לא אצא מרוסיה עד שאני אראה את נתן, עד שאנחנו נתחתן.
היינו בטוחים שזה ייקח כמה חודשים, אז שנהיה ביחד. זה לקח 12 שנה.
A short while later, in a trumped-up trial, Sharansky is accused of being a traitor to the Soviet regime and sentenced to 13 years of hard labor. Sharansky's last words to the court.
בסוף אמרתי שכמו שיהודים במשך אלפים שנה היו אומרים אחד לשני, לשנה הבאה בירושלים, ככה אני אומר עכשיו לאביטל, לישראל העם שלנו לשנה הבאה בירושלים, ולמשפט אין לי מה להגיד.
For 9 years, Sharansky sits alone in a punishment cell in Siberia, while Avital runs a worldwide campaign to free him.
ואביטל הגיעה כולה נסערת ונרגשת, והיא אמרה, אנטולי נמק בכלא, הסובייטים ייתנו לו למות.
She garners the support of world Jewry and international leaders, including U.S. President Ronald Reagan. On February 11, 1986, the world holds its breath as Natan Sharansky walks to freedom.
I think of the sight of Natan Sharansky, still in the dominion of his KGB captors, zigzagging his way across the tarmac after they ordered him to walk a straight line.
On that same historic day, Sharansky arrives in the land of Israel, to the joy of his mother and wife, to thousands of rejoicing Israelis and Jews around the world.
Anatoly Sharansky has fought heroically, alone, under tremendous pressure, as a proud Jew, as a freedom-lover person, as a man with a mission, as a devoted Zionist, and showed that you can arrest a body, you cannot put in prison a spirit. Faith prevails.
After his release, Sharansky continues his struggle for the freedom of Soviet Jewry. Natan Sharansky, the hero who inspired a generation, minister in 4 consecutive Israeli governments, the only foreign recipient of both the Congressional Medal of Honor and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, never loses sight of his mission.
I want to tell to all the Jews of the world that we together, Jews of all the world, are very strong.
Today, 25 years after his liberation, as chairman of the Jewish Agency for Israel, Sharansky carries his message forcefully.
Okay, so there's an old adage, the picture paints 1,000 words, and just for some of us to see those images really brings up the goosebumps again, to see how Avital tirelessly campaigned for her husband, see the thousands of Jews across the world from all shapes and sizes and political backgrounds and religious believings, Jews and non-Jews as well, who stood together shoulder to shoulder and really helped bring down the Iron Curtain. And it's an incredible example of where there's a will, where there's a way. And in many ways, that incredible, tremendous achdut is what unity is what Sharansky himself symbolizes, that ingathering of exiles. Of course, once Sharansky was released, that was just the dam burst. In 1990, 1 million Jews from the Soviet Union former Soviet Union arrived in the state of Israel, to such an extent that 1 out of 5 Jews today in Israel, Russian actually is their mother language. So all this miracle happened in our own lifetime. And Natan Sharansky, in many ways, was that leader. And one of the biggest issues, of course, is what happens next. There's an old adage about how he managed to stay sane. There was actually an article in the BBC about it, and that, of course, was to do with chess. Sharansky, believe it or not, was an incredible chess player and still is. And when he was growing up in the Ukraine, he was a chess champion of his town. And one of his skills, which he never realized what he'd be able to do with in the future, is he could play simultaneous chess games in his head against different components. Little did he know that would end up being his ticket to sanity when he was locked in the Gulag. And because growing up in the Soviet Union was so difficult, the Soviet Jews had to try and be the best at everything. So he said in a very candid interview, and he has a tremendous sense of humor, as you're about to hear, he said, my aim was to be the best chess player in the Soviet Union, but I was good, but I wasn't quite good enough. So then I went to study physics, and my aim was to be the best physics expert in the Soviet Union, and I was good, but not quite good enough. So the only thing left to me was to be the best political prisoner, and that I did succeed. And it's a very tongue-in-cheek story, but at the end of the day, it's incredibly telling that after he came to Israel, he didn't just stop, he didn't just hang up his proverbial hat and sink into retirement and anonymity. He stayed at the forefront. After all this trauma, he came to Israel, he established a family in Israel, he lives today in Yerushalayim, and then he became a minister for Israeli government, became the deputy prime minister, he became the head of the Jewish Agency for a decade, and he was in the forefront, most importantly, of Jewish identity. One of the biggest issues is that is what's happening to the young Jews today, where they're losing their identity, they're losing their pride. They think it's a burden to be a Jew and not a privilege to be a Jew. And Anatoly Sharansky, now known as Natan Sharansky, spent 10 years in the Jewish Agency and before that in the Israeli political scene, scene, doing exactly that, trying and succeeding in igniting Jewish pride amongst the young people. In fact, he actually said that the battle that takes place on university campuses is one where enemies try and convince the Jewish students that in order to be part of the world of justice and freedom, you have to disengage yourself from Israel and from your own identity. He said, Natan Sharansky, that if you want to be part of the world of freedom and justice, antikun olam, then your identity is your source of strength and to fight for these things. And that is why your identity, which is based on your history and our traditions, and of course is our connection to Israel. So if any young Jew would learn from Natan Sharansky, they would learn the following, that what makes the Jews Jewish, what makes us is not what David Lloyd George said, that the Jews are like a piece of metal who've been beaten over the years, so strong, they're like metal, they can't break them. That's a negative, that's part of the answer. The real thing that keeps us Jewish is our pride in our tradition, our shared tradition, our pride in our sense of community, and most importantly, our pride in our land. With all of its problems, Israel is the land of the Jewish people, and that's what we've been hoping for 2,000 years. And that's really what Sharansky symbolizes more than anything else. He personifies that struggle for freedom, that yearning for freedom, and most importantly, actualizing the freedom itself by coming, eventually living the dream and eventually coming to Israel and building a life for the future. And I believe that he's actually on right now. Is this right?
Yes. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. It's a great honor to introduce you personally from Modin to Yerushalayim to the people of the United Kingdom.
Thank you. Thank you. I just finished Dikat Hametz. We are just finishing, and I know that's of course very old tradition of thousands of years, but there is new Jerusalemite tradition, which is that immediately after you finish Dikat Hametz, you with all your family and children and grandchildren go first quickly to some pasta cafe, which is going to be closed in a few hours. So like the last Hametz that you can still meet before you're finally free. And so I just came from this cafe. I had my last pasta meal, and I'm very happy to join all of you in another celebration of the Seder Pesach. And I want to tell you that it so happened that my first Seder Pesach was when I was 24 years old, because I grew without anything Jewish, without any Jewish, without any Jewish book, without any language, without any community. And the only Jewish thing which I had in my youth was anti-Semitism, a lot of anti-Semitism. And as a result, you know that that because you're Jew, you have to learn how to survive in spite of this anti-Semitism. And you have to be the best in your career, that's all. As parents were teaching, because you're Jew, not to survive, you have to be the physics, mathematics, whatever. So it's like there was nothing positive in this being Jewish. It was like you are born with such a disease, which is written in the idea of your parents, Jew, and you have to know how to survive with this. And only when 1967, Israel entered our life very powerfully, like huge humiliation for Soviet Union. They made such big efforts in order the Arab countries will destroy Israel. And Israel emerged strong and invincible and defeated in 6 days its enemies. And everybody starts looking at you, those who love you, those who hate you, and saying, oh my God, how you got, no, nobody said, my God, there was no God in Soviet Union. But they say, how you guys did it? And so you understand that for all these people, you are connected to Israel, whether you want or not. And then you start learning in the underground from the books which Jews from America and from Britain and from other places were bringing to us. We start learning about ourselves. Suddenly you recognize that your history can start not from communist revolution, not from 1970, Exodus from Egypt. And it's such unbelievable, interesting history. And look at these guys, the liberation of the Kotel. They're 20 years old, and you're 20 years old. And what all you're thinking about your career. And they're part of this unbelievable history. And all these Jews who are coming from different parts of the world, and they say, oh, your father is from Odessa. My father is from Odessa. We are family, we want to help you. And that's feeling that you have history, you have family. If only decide it's your family. And that that you have the state, which is ready to send airplanes to the end of the world, but to help you. That's what suddenly gives you strength to start fighting. And so when I started fighting as an activist, we also started learning Hebrew. In fact, in the underground Ulpanim, 3, 4, 5 people group. And so one day, on my first Seder Pesach, all the teachers bring all their pupils in one apartment in Moscow. And there are like 30 people. None of us knows Hebrew good enough to understand Haggadah, but everybody prepared some few phrases which he or she understands. But when it comes to Bachol Dor V'Dor Kanim Aleinu L'Chalutenu, it's so easy to understand, because it's enough to look out of the window to see these KGB guys who are following some of us. And I, as an activist and then spokesman of our movement, was always followed by KGB. So the first Seder was really this feeling that the Paro is just near, but we are fighting and people of Israel are together with us. And I remember Seder a few years after, when I'm in a punishing cell. And when punishing cell is a dark place, 3 pieces of bread, 3 cups of water, and the salt, that's all what you have. And you can become crazy there. And they're keeping me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days in the punishing cell. And then the day when I think that is the day of Seder Pesach. And I decide, okay, these 3 pieces of bread, this is my matzah, and this salt is maror, and hot water, that is the sweetest thing which can be in this cold punching cell. And you try to tell to yourself every phrase that you can remember from Haggadah, and I already knew a lot of them. And how powerful it sounded. Today we are slaves, tomorrow we are free people, today we are here, tomorrow in Jerusalem. And that was the feeling, for sure it will be. KGB tries to tell you that you're alone, but you know that all the people of Israel at this moment are sitting and praying and fighting for our freedom. And I did know from my years of the activity, being an activist and spokesman of our movement, I knew very well how the Jews of the world are fighting for us. And English, British Jews, that was our main communication line. There was Michael Sherman, the teacher of Russian language from London, who started calling us. I had maybe 1,000 telephone calls with him for all these years, which we are informing about what's happening from telephones, which tomorrow will be disconnected. And then he's sending to all the other organizations. And 35 in Great Britain, and the Federation, of course, they continue their fight together with all the Jews of the world. You have no doubt this feeling of unity, of connection, of our strength. What is this Paro? What is this KGB? They all disappear exactly as the army of Paro. That was exactly my feeling. And so the day came, and I was released, and then we continued our demonstrations, and the Jews, other Refuseniks, and then Iron Curtain fell, and 1 million Jews came to Israel, and another 1 million Jews went out of the Soviet Union, and all the world is more free place. So we always have to remember, to remind ourselves and to our children and grandchildren that Yetziat Mitzrayim, Exodus, liberation, is really happening in every generation. And we were part, and so many Jews of the world, so many Jews of England and America, and of course Israel itself, we are part of this unique struggle, modern exodus of Jewish people. So remind yourselves always about the real strengths which we Jewish people feel when we are united, when we are connected to our identity, when we go back to our identity, when we discover what a unique history we have, what a unique family we have, what a unique country we have, and it gives tremendous strength to fight for yourself, for other Jews, and for practically for freedom in all the world. That's our message to the people of the world this day and all the other days. And this desire to continue our mutual journey through history as one people is much stronger than all the disagreements which we have. And that's also a very important lesson of the struggle for Soviet Jewry. It seems like it's one big movement. There were organizations who didn't talk to one another, who hated one another, who were resistant to the activity of the other group. But then it doesn't matter. As long as all of them felt that it is our historical struggle for of fighting family of Jewish people, for KGB, we were all one big anti-Soviet organization, Zionist organization. And that's exactly what we Jewish people are. So thank you, congratulations. And if you have, I see you have some questions, a couple of questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Hi, I'd like to thank you very much. It's a real honor to be able to introduce and listen to a true Jewish hero, one of my childhood heroes and everyone's heroes. And of course, the big question now is, what is the big movement now? What can we do now for the sake of the Jewish people, wherever we live in the world? What would you say is the most pressing cause now that we need to be activists for? In the 70s and 80s, it was free Soviet Jewry. What is it now in the 21st century?
Well, look, first of all, we have our inner problem. It's assimilation, shrinking of our communities. And as I saw so many times, I practically traveled in almost in every Jewish community in the world when I was head of Jewish agency and even before. And I can say that there are so many questions, how you're facing the challenge, how you guarantee continuity of Jewish people. My experience shows that for every community it's true. There are only two factors which are resistant to this. It's faith and Zionism. Connection to your tradition on different levels, but connection to your tradition and connection to the state of Israel. If you have both, you are active part of family and the future for generations to come is guaranteed. If you have one of these, you have to work on the other, but it's possible. If you don't have both, your grandchildren will not be Jewish. And it's true for Mexico, it's true for Britain, it's true for Paris, it's true for United States of America, for Russia. And that's my experience. So it's strengthening this connection with Israel. It's not simply, let's say, our obligation to fight for our state. It's our desire to guarantee the future of Jewish people. Second, about external problems. Without you, I heard in the end, during your talk, you were speaking about the anti-Semitism. You know, anti-Semitism always united Jewish people with all our differences. The moment there was blood label in Damascus, or Bailey's case, or Dreyfus case, or many other famous anti-Semitic cases, all the Jews were united. And it seems it's like guaranteed that that is what keeps us together. First of all, what keeps us together, as you correctly said, it's our pride in our identity and our desire to be part of Jewish people. But the most alarming problem of today is that while anti-Semitism is growing at the same time on the left and on the right, the struggle against all types of anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, hatred of Jewish religion, hatred of Jewish state, is not really uniting many of us. People on the left prefer to ignore anti-Semitism on the left. And people on the right prefer to ignore anti-Semitism on the right. And that's a serious problem. Suddenly, anti-Semitism, which was so obvious that it's something which unites all of us, turns into a political problem. And that's why I propose this, in order people will feel this deep connection between hatred of Jews and hatred of Jewish state. I propose to see the resemblance when there is demonization of Jewish people or demonization of Jewish state, when there is legitimization or double standard applied to Jewish people or Jewish or Israel as a state, it's all the same. And that's the essence of international definition. And now there is a struggle for recognizing this definition, for recognizing of this deep connection between anti-Semitism on the left and anti-Semitism on the right. And it's interesting that, in fact, many universities in Great Britain already accepted it. The universities in America, the campuses of America, there is a huge struggle still ahead of us. And while so many states, even Muslim states like Bahrain, accepted this international formula and agree that we have to fight against demonization of Israel and demonization of Jewish people, there are some Jewish organizations who have doubts. Isn't it a restriction of the freedom of speech? So we really have to be united in our struggle against anti-Semitism, and the enemy is not our enemies. Of course, they are enemies. The enemy is our own disability to look above politics, above disagreements, and to fight together against this anti-Semitism. It's a very important topic, and again, it all comes to the same. We can successfully fight against anti-Semitism only if we feel ourselves very proud Jews, if we feel ourselves intimately connected to our family and to our state.
Excellent. And that's a very positive message. In fact, just recently I heard Deborah Lipstadt, the famous historian, talking about anti-Semitism, and someone said, what's the biggest problem for the Jews? And she answered very quickly, the Jewish people themselves, because we also need to focus on what unites us and what not divides us. So that's a very important thing. Just one other quick question. Recently you came out with a new book, which you wrote called Never Alone with the good friend of mine, Gil Troy, and you were asked about it. I was wondering, after this book, The Fear No Evil, the famous book, why you felt the urge to write another book, and what really what's that
I'll
about?
tell you, Fear No Evil is a very important document of the struggle and interrogations. And I was just out of prison. I was fresh. I spent a lot of time describing the methods how you're challenging KGB, because we were still in the struggle. So those who want to understand the nature of the Soviet regime and the life of a imprisoned person and how you can stand against it, of course, that's an important book. But in this book, I compare three perspectives which I had on this book is about dialogue between Israel and Jewish people. That's something that I was dealing in the last 40 years, whether I was a Moscow activist, whether I was prisoner of Zion, whether I was minister or head of Jewish agency, I was always dealing with the problem of dialogue between Israel and Jewish people. And there is a lot of debate today, are we converging or diverging? What's happening with the Jewish people? And I thought that my perspective from three different points, from the point of prison, 9 years in prison, from the point of Israeli government, 9 years in the government, speaking to Jewish people in the name of the government, and then from 9 years in Jewish agencies, speaking to Israeli government in the name of Jewish people. That gives me a very good perspective to be optimistic. And of course, to analyze what are the problems of, that Israel often has, saying all these Jewish people, they're really betraying our interests. So some Jewish communities are saying, oh, this government of Israel is betraying our Jewish values. We are speaking very open about it because I was in the most important moments of the crises. But in the end, the consequences, the conclusions are very optimistic, because conclusion, that's me and Gil Troy from two different perspectives, that our desire to be one people, to be one family, to continue our journey together is much stronger than our disagreements. But we have to talk to one another more. So this book is exactly about it. It's about that the moment you're part of Jewish people, you're never alone. They in prison tried to convince me that I'm alone. I knew that they're lying, that I'm not alone. And definitely today we have no reason, even when we are during corona virus sitting at home, we should know we have no reason to feel ourselves alone, lonely. We are part of great people with a great mission in this world.
Okay, and finally, in a couple of days, Jews around the world will be sitting having a Seder meal with their family and their friends, wherever they are. But I heard recently an interview with your daughter, Rachel, that the Sharansky family has a very special Seder that they do a couple of weeks before everyone else's Seder. Can you tell us something a bit about that?
No, well, we have two Seders. One as all of us, and the other is 3 weeks before the day of my release. And that's when, with the children, and now already with grandchildren, every year, we're sitting and telling our story and us answering the questions. And when the children and now grandchildren are very small, their questions are mainly about what animals I had in my cell and how I played with them. And they become serious, how you knew what's happening with your wife and how Avital knew what's happening. And then there are questions about Jewish solidarity and how Jewish people were fighting about you, and then about defeat of Soviet Union. So we have made this whole circle with the children, and now we go to this circle with grandchildren, and that's great entrance to our second Seder, which will be tomorrow, because then when we are sitting and speaking about what happened 2,000 years, 3,500 years ago, our children know very well that that's not only about the past, it's about today and about our future.
Amazing. Thank
Chag
you very
Sameach
much.
to everybody. Thank you.
Chag Sameach. That's a wonderful message to leave us with.
Yeah. Chag Kasher Sameach.
Okay, folks, that was an incredible message. Here's a man who's been through so much. We can't even imagine, as much as we complain with our first world problems, what it must have been like to be in the gulag, and half that time in that gulag, half of those 7 years, he sat in a solitary confinement cell, yet continues to remain optimistic, and most importantly, continues to remind us as Jews that we need to focus on not what divides us, but what we have in common, and most importantly, not just to talk the talk, but to walk the walk. Because my friends, to Jew is to do. The first commandment, the first Jew got, Abraham and Sarah, the first Jews, was Lech Lecha. We've got to get up and go. And just like with the Soviet Jewry movement, we say, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. Our rabbis teach us, Lo Alecha Hamlacha Ligmor. It's not up to us to finish the work sometimes. But Lo Ata Benu Bet Chorim Levatam Mimena. We can't just say, well, let someone else do it. Because if everyone else would have said, let someone else do it, there would have been no Soviet Jewry movement. And Natan Sharansky would still be sitting in the gulag, and the Soviet Union would still be standing. So it's an incredible message. As much as we complain how difficult our own lockdown is with our TVs and our books and our families and our phones, you know, you need to read Natan's story. And I just thought, here's a man who had literally survived for 7 years with a Sefer Tehillim, with one book of Psalms and his mind. And it's an incredible, incredible story. It really reminds us of what Viktor Frankl taught everyone, that we are masters of our own destiny. Natan Sharansky said, they try to humiliate me, but I can humiliate me. So it's just an incredible story. And he always knew that one day he would get to see his wife, and one day he would get to be back with his people in his land. And a real inspiration for us to hear from a real live hero, and above all, an incredibly soft-spoken and modest man. He's got a lot to be non-modest about. He was literally the only person in the history of the world that received both the Congressional Gold Medal and the Presidential Medal of Freedom in the United States of America. He also was a recipient of the Jewish Nobel Prize, known as the Genesis Prize, and just a tremendous amount of achievements. But above all, he walks humbly with his God. And it's a real lesson and inspiration for all of us as we go into Pesach, that really what keeps the Jews Jewish is what Natan symbolizes: our love of our traditions, our love of our community, of our own people of Israel, and most importantly, the love of the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael, that holds it all together. And that's a message, I think, that is a great message to leave with tonight. And now we are going to move over to the music entertainment. After we talked about Torah Israel and Eretz Israel, we're now going to talk about Musikat Israel. And we're moving over to Yuval from the Kedma Band. And Kedma, just so you all know, is the old Hebrew word for east, symbolizing Israel. We're finishing off our beautiful presentation with some beautiful music. Thank you very much, Yuval.
Thank you, Tovia. Nice to be with you. Hello, everyone. Actually, I want everybody to join me for this song. It's a song of freedom, song of Pesach. By the way, I'm not broadcasting from Egypt. I'm here in London. I would like to invite you to press on the gallery. On the top right on the screen, there is a view button, and then you can move to galleries. That's what I'm seeing. I can see you. Hello, everybody. Wave your hands. Hello, yeah. And I can even, usually, most of the performance, I want you to actually, please switch on your screen. Most of the performance, I would like you to keep your microphone muted, but maybe for this song, if you feel, just for a second, you can unmute, and you will know what to sing, all right? And that's a song about freedom, and in English as well. When Israel was in Egypt land. Let's hear you.
Let my people go.
Very good. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Hear you.
Let my people go.
Yeah, we have a choir. So go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell them, oh Pharaoh too.
Let my people go.
Very good, we're going key. So Moses went to Egypt land. It's you.
Let my people go.
He made all pharaohs understand.
Let my people go.
And this federation, the World Vanish Choir, yeah. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell all Pharaoh, what did he tell you?
Let my people go.
Do one more round, but that's actually now in Hebrew. So the translation is Shlach na et ami, let my people go. So let's see. Shlach na et ami. That's our little practice, yes? And let's see. So I'll sing the verse in Hebrew. Let's see if you can join me in this one. מהר משה ציווה פרעה, שלח נא את עמי, מצוות האל לאמור נא לו. Let's see you.
שלח נא את עמי.
A few Israelis. קומה לך נא אל כבד הלב הרע, צב לו בשמי, שלח נא את עמי. Give yourself a round of applause to the World Zionist Federation choir, Zoom choir. I think you can join me for some Pesach songs. Yeah, maybe I would like to ask you to mute at the moment, yes, because otherwise I might be cut, my sound might be cut. But join me for some Pesach songs. Are you ready? I'll start with the Israeli one that is very kind of jolly general. שמחה רבה, שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא, שמחה רבה, שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא, תפרו, תפרו, תפרו לי בגד עם כיסים, מילאו, מילאו, מילאו כיסי באגוזים, שמחה רבה, שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא, שמחה רבה, שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. May I ask you please mute your microphone this time, because I'm not sure, unless I will ask you so, because I can see some people left the microphone unmuted and it might cut my music to other people. So if I may ask everybody to mute the microphones, or if someone from Dima, if you can help unmute everyone, and I'll unmute myself, please. Shall we do that?
I will try.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I was going to sing you some Pesach. All right, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And join me for this one. That's usually the youngest in the family will sing us. Do we have like a child who wants to sing Manishtana here? Not sure I can see a lot of children in this audience. If there is, so maybe unmute yourself. Otherwise, I'll sing it. נשתנה הלילה הזה מכל הלילות, מכל הלילות, שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים חמץ ומצה, חמץ ומצה. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה כולו מצה, הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה כולו מצה, שבכל הלילות אין אנו אוכלים שאר ירקות, שאר ירקות. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה כולו מרור, הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה כולו מרור. Let's do one another round. שבכל הלילות אין אנו מטבילים אפילו פעם אחת, אפילו פעם אחת. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה שתי פעמים, הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה שתי פעמים. So I'm going to remind you some songs from the Haggadah, from the Seder Pesach. Let's see through this one. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורים, בני חורים. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורים. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורים, בני חורים. Let's have actually another, I want to do something more interactive with you. We're going to sing אחד מי יודע, אחד מי יודע, and I will ask you if you know. And so if you know what's this next one, without please no cheating, no Haggadah in your hands. And let's see, if you know the answers, please unmute it. אחד, אני יודע, אחד, אני יודע, אחד, אחד אלוהינו, 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 שבשמיים ובארץ. 2, שניים מי יודע, שניים אני יודע. נו שניים? שני לוחות הברית, אחד אלוהינו, 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 שבשמיים ובארץ. I think we're going to jump a bit forward, so we have a little bit harder. Who knows? 12, 12, 12. אני יודע, 12. Who knows is 12, 12. שבטיה, 11. כוכביה, it's a stars. כוכביה, 10. בריה, it's 10 commandments, the דיברות. 9. לידה, yes, pregnancy, like a big bell. we've then 8.
ימי מילה.
Yes, ימי מילה. 7.
ימי שבתא.
I have someone is cheating with the seder, or you know the answer? ימי שבתא. 6. סדרי משנה. 5. חומשי תורה, the Torah books, yeah. 4. 3. 2 לוחות הברית, אחד אלוהינו, 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 שבשמיים ובארץ. I think the 13, but you can join me. 13 מי יודע, 13 אני יודע, 13 מידה היה, 12 שבטיה, 11 כוכביה, 10 דבריה, 9 יחדה, 8 ימי מילה, 7 ימי שבתה, 6 סדרי משנה, 5 חוקרי תורה, 4 אמהות, 3 אבות, 2 לוחות הברית, אחד אלוהינו, 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 שבשמיים ובארץ. Well done for joining and knowing the answers. הוציאנו ממצרים ולא עשה בהם שבטים. ידינו אילו עשה בהם שבטים ולא עשה באלוהיהם ולא עשה באלוהיהם. די דיינו 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 אילו עשה באלוהיהם ולא הרג את בכוריהם ולא הרג את בכוריהם דיינו אילו הרג את בכוריהם ולא נתן לנו את ממונם ולא נתן לנו את ממונם דיינו 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 Let's do another round. אילו נתן לנו את ממונם ולא קראנו את הים ולא קרא לנו את... Please mute yourself. I'll have to ask you to mute because I think the sound is really, really bad. I'm really sorry. Thank you. Thank you. ולא נתן לנו את הים דיינו אילו קרא לנו את הים ולא העבירנו בתוכו בחובה ולא העבירנו בתוכו בחובה דיינו די דיינו די דיינו די דיינו 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 די דיינו די דיינו די דיינו 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 Let's see what other songs we have for Pesach. On my list, here we have, that's a nice, lovely one. But it has a newer adaptation, a newer melody. It goes like that. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו עמד עלינו לכלותנו והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מצילנו מידם והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מצילנו מידם דה 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 traditional tune for this one that I learned as a kid. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו אלא שבכל דור ודור עומדים עלינו לכלותנו אלא שבכל דור ודור עומדים עלינו לכלותנו והקדוש ברוך הוא יצילנו מידם והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם. That's actually. Yes, I also actually have not more Pesach songs, but also had in mind, because it was Sharansky, I thought I'll sing you a few Russian songs that were translated to Hebrew. My surname is Havkin, and that's origin is actually in Russia. My Russian is not really polished, really good. So that's for my late grandfather, who actually came to London many years ago. But definitely, I know a lot of Russian songs that was translated to Hebrew. Maybe you can join me this one. Don't know if you know this one. תוהרות חול המטפחת לתפרוך של הים, אז את אמרת לי לא אשכח זאת את פגישתנו לאט, ויהי היום ואנו נפרדנו פתאום, תחול המטפחת קור טוב של נחת והתגשם החלום, תמו הכפור והדלת, שמש ואור מסביב, בוקר וערב, לילה ואלף, אלף כוכבי האביב, ושוב היום, ואנו נפגשנו פתאום, תחול המטפחת, קור טוב של נחת, ונתגשם בחלום. את זורם הנחל, הולך לו אל הים, ולידו צומח אלון נישא ורם, בגדה מנגד מחלון בקתה, ידעתי לרוסיה בעצב נשקפה, או נישא כה חסון הנחה, את ראי הבלי אני כה בודדה, או לא נישא כה חסון הנחה, את ראי הבלי אני כה בודדה, קלים קקלים קקלים כמיה, קלים קקלים קקלים כמיה, תחת עץ האשוח מה אוהב לנוח, תחת צמרת תחת יולי תחת צמרת כמה טוב לחלום. Are you ready? Let's hear. I want to see you clap because I prefer your microphones mute. So please mute your microphones, but I want you to clap with a rhythm. Kalim, kakalim, 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 kamaya, kalim, kakalim, 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 kakalim. Another a Russian song, this quick one. לי כל גל נושא מזכרת, מן הבית, מן החוף, מן העצים יפי צמא.
C'est l'animateur qui l'a arrêté. Non. Oui, la caméra.
Ah non, on peut. Oui, la caméra.
Yuval, אתה במute.
voilà.
Yeah, please I'll ask you to keep on muting, otherwise we might have a problem of sound. Going back to some Pesach songs, how much time do we have? Let's see what Dima says. If you have any special request, for songs, so please you can write in the chat maybe. I'll try to see that. But let's finish with another Pesach song or two. Maybe you know this one. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז, הייתה יהודה לקודשו, ישראל ממשלותיו, הים ראה וינס, הירדן יסוב לאחור. I think this one you know it, that's a good song to end. It goes, לשנה הבאה בירושלים הבנויה. לשנה הבאה בירושלים, לשנה הבאה בירושלים, לשנה הבאה בירושלים, לשנה הבאה בירושלים הבנויה, לשנה הבאה בירושלים, בשנה הבאה ירושלים הבנויה, בשנה הבאה בירושלים, בשנה הבאה בירושלים הבנויה. I want to wish everybody a very happy kosher Pesach. It's really nice to be with you in this World Zionist organization. Free Zoom talk. Thank you so much, Lima, for having us. I'm going to check in the chat if there is any special request, but otherwise, I think we're going to go for our final song. Yeah, I'm just trying. I'm not sure which tune or which song is it exactly. So I think we're just going to finish with Salam, hoping for peace. And you can join me without singing, but let's see your hands moving. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם, סלם, סלם, שלום, סלם, סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם, סלם, שלום. 1, 2, let's see you sing, you dancing in your living room. Yeah, ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. סלם, סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם, סלם, שלום, שלום, סלם, עלינו ועל כל העולם, סלם, שלום. We go. יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם, סלם, שלום, שלום, סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם, סלם, שלום, סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם, סלם, שלום, שלום, סלם, סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם, סלם. חג פסח שמח, everyone have a great Passover and goodbye. Yay! Can see you waving, lovely. Shalom.
חג שמח, חג פסח שמח.
חג שמח, everyone.
חג שמח, everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us. Take care, be safe, be well, have a wonderful Pesach, Passover, and for those who celebrate Easter, enjoy and have a wonderful Easter too. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Chag Sameach.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.